You check your blood sugar before breakfast, before coffee, before anything, and the number staring back at you makes no sense. Last night you ate grilled fish, steamed vegetables, a small portion of brown rice. You went to sleep proud of yourself because by 8 p.m. your glucose was sitting at 122, controlled, calm, exactly where it should be. And now it's 6 in the morning. You haven't touched a single thing. 10 hours of sleep, not one bite of food, and your glucometer reads 158. You didn't eat wrong, you didn't cheat, you followed every rule you were given, and somehow your body still delivered that number. Your doctor told you to keep watching your diet, your nutritionist said cut the carbs further, and you went home and stared at that glucometer, wondering what you did wrong. Here's the truth, you didn't do anything wrong. The problem wasn't the meal you ate. The problem is what your body does while you're unconscious, in the dark, somewhere between 2 and 4 in the morning, without your knowledge or your permission. And in the next 22 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what that is, why almost everything people use to manage blood sugar completely misses it, and the one compound confirmed across 23 randomized controlled trials that specifically targets this overnight mechanism. Not a gimmick, not a trend, 23 trials. Drop your morning fasting glucose in the comments right now. The number you see before breakfast, before anything. And if you take metformin, write yes next to it. I read every single comment on this channel. By the time this video ends, that morning number will finally make sense to you in a way your doctor never explained. Let me tell you about Beverly. Beverly is 69 years old, retired elementary school principal from Birmingham, Alabama, 41 years shaping the lives of children. The kind of woman who solves problems the same way she always has, with discipline, consistency, and doing the right things every single day. When she was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes 18 months ago, she attacked it the way she attacked everything. She cut white bread immediately, moved to a Mediterranean diet without complaint, added a 30-minute walk every afternoon, started Ceylon cinnamon in warm water every morning before breakfast, bought a glucometer, and checked her numbers twice daily. She did everything correctly, everything the nutrition website said, everything her primary care physician recommended, and her postprandial glucose, the reading 2 hours after meals, started responding. 140, then 135, sometimes 128. Moving in the right direction, Beverly felt like the system was working, but every single morning, before breakfast, before anything, that fasting number sat between 145 and 160. Day after day, week after week, for 11 months, her doctor increased her metformin at month 9. The post-meal numbers improved further. The morning number barely moved. Beverly told me she had started dreading the moment she woke up. Not because she felt unwell, she felt completely fine. She dreaded it because she knew exactly what that glucometer would show her, and she had no explanation for it, and neither did her doctor. Keep working on the diet, he said. Give the metformin more time. That was the wrong answer, because Beverly's morning number wasn't a diet problem. It wasn't a willpower problem. It wasn't a compliance problem. It was a liver problem, a specific biological mechanism that her entire protocol, cinnamon, Mediterranean diet, afternoon walks, metformin, was never designed to fully address. And that's what we need to talk about. Your body runs on biological rhythms. Your internal clock, the circadian system that governs sleep cycles, hormone release, body temperature, and metabolism, begins preparing you for waking approximately 2 to 3 hours before you actually open your eyes. Part of that preparation involves a hormone called cortisol. Cortisol begins rising around 2 to 4 a.m. It peaks close to the moment you wake, and its primary job in this context is simple: mobilize energy. Make sure fuel is available when you need to get up and function. One of the main ways it does that is by signaling your liver to release glucose into the bloodstream. This is called hepatic glucose production. Your liver stores sugar in the form of glycogen, but it also has the biological machinery to manufacture glucose from scratch, building it out of amino acids and fat through a process called gluconeogenesis. Glucose production from non-sugar sources. Your liver literally constructs sugar from raw materials and releases it into your blood, entirely on its own schedule. In a person with healthy insulin function, this process is quiet and self-correcting. The glucose rises slightly, insulin responds, it clears before the morning reading. But here's what happens after 60, when insulin resistance has set in. That cortisol signal fires at 3 a.m., the liver starts its production run, and your insulin system, weakened by years of receptor downregulation, cannot clear that glucose fast enough. It accumulates, it sits in your bloodstream for hours. By the time you wake up at 6 a.m. and press that glucometer to your finger, what you're reading is your liver's overnight work, not last night's dinner. This has a name: the dawn phenomenon, first documented in detail in the 1980s and now thoroughly established in the diabetes literature. Researchers estimate it affects somewhere between 30 and 50% of people with type 2 diabetes. Think about what that means. Roughly 1 in every 2 diabetics has a morning fasting number driven primarily by what their liver does overnight, not by what they ate the day before. Half of everyone fighting this condition is focused on the wrong battle. Beverly wasn't failing. Her protocol was genuinely excellent for daytime glucose control. She just had nothing in her arsenal that could reach the 4 hours between midnight and dawn when her liver was quietly running its glucose production line without interruption. And this is where things get specific. Before I show you what actually works on this mechanism, I need to explain clearly why the things most people are already using don't, not discourage anyone. To help you understand why you're adding one more tool, not replacing what you have: cinnamon. The mechanism behind cinnamon is a compound called MHCP, which activates insulin receptor kinase. It improves peripheral insulin sensitivity, meaning muscle tissue and fat cells. It has a modest effect on the liver, but the evidence for cinnamon specifically targeting overnight hepatic glucose production is thin. A 2011 study in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition examined cinnamon's effect on fasting glucose specifically and found inconsistent results precisely because fasting glucose is driven by the hepatic mechanism that cinnamon doesn't strongly reach: apple cider vinegar. ACV works through acetic acid's inhibition of digestive enzymes that break down complex carbohydrates. It slows glucose from food entering the bloodstream. This is a meal-based mechanism. It works on food as it moves through your digestive system. If you take it at 10 p.m., its effective window lasts roughly 3 to 4 hours. Your liver's production peak begins around 2 a.m. By then, most of the ACV's activity has already diminished. Not zero effect, just not targeted, not designed for the overnight window. What you need for the dawn phenomenon is something with an entirely different biochemical target, something that reaches the liver's glucose manufacturing pathway directly, something that suppresses gluconeogenesis, the production of new glucose, specifically during the overnight hours, and something with a long enough half-life to still be active at 3 a.m. if taken before sleep. That is a very specific set of requirements, and there is one natural compound that meets all three, backed by 23 clinical trials: Nigella sativa, black seed, sometimes called black cumin, though it has no botanical relationship to the cumin in your spice cabinet. Small seeds, slightly angular, a surface texture like rough leather. They smell like thyme and pepper layered over something almost medicinal. That smell is the chemistry. That aroma comes from a volatile compound called thymoquinone, and thymoquinone is the active molecule that has appeared in over 1,000 peer-reviewed papers since the 1980s. In 2017, a meta-analysis published in Complementary Therapies in Medicine, led by Dr. Dariabi Kotbasara and colleagues, pooled the results of 23 randomized controlled trials studying Nigella sativa and blood glucose. 23 trials. Not 2, not 5. 23, across multiple populations, multiple countries, multiple dosing forms. The conclusion: Nigella sativa significantly improved fasting blood glucose, HbA1c, and insulin resistance, with a safety profile described as favorable. Now, before I explain exactly how it works, I want to give you one piece of historical context, because this compound has been used for over 3,000 years. Seeds were found inside the tomb of Tutankhamun. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is quoted in multiple hadith, describing it as a cure for everything except death. Ancient Egyptian physicians used it for digestive disorders and inflammation, and what their records describe as sweet urine, which is the ancient description of diabetes. And the book of Isaiah in chapter 28 references the wisdom of cultivating and using black cumin, which most biblical botanists now identify as Nigella sativa. 3 separate civilizations, 3,000 years of consistent use, and then 23 clinical trials to explain why. Thymoquinone works through 4 simultaneous mechanisms. I want to walk through each one, because understanding this is what makes the protocol make sense. Mechanism 1, hepatic glucose suppression. This is the overnight mechanism, the one Beverly needed. Thymoquinone inhibits 2 specific enzymes in the gluconeogenesis pathway, glucose 6-phosphatase and phosphoenolpyruvate carboxykinase. These are the rate-limiting enzymes in hepatic glucose production. The biological gatekeepers of the liver's manufacturing line. Block those enzymes and the liver's ability to construct new glucose overnight is significantly reduced. The production slows. The glucose that would have accumulated in your blood at 3 a.m. simply isn't produced. Here is what makes this remarkable. Metformin, the most commonly prescribed diabetes medication in the world, also suppresses hepatic glucose production. It works through a pathway called AMPK. Thymoquinone suppresses it through direct enzyme inhibition. Different route, same destination. The liver's overnight factory runs at reduced capacity. Mechanism 2, peripheral insulin sensitivity. Thymoquinone improves how responsive muscle and fat cells are to insulin. It does this through AMPK activation, which improves GLUT4 translocation, moving glucose transport proteins to the cell surface and pulling glucose into muscle tissue. This addresses daytime, post-meal blood sugar, while the enzyme inhibition addresses the overnight mechanism, both happening simultaneously. Mechanism 3, beta cell protection. This is the one most blood sugar content never covers, and it may be the most important mechanism of all. Your beta cells are the cells in your pancreas that produce insulin. They are under oxidative stress every single day you have elevated blood sugar. High glucose generates free radicals that attack beta cell DNA, proteins, and membranes. Over years and decades, this oxidative damage kills beta cells, and beta cells don't regenerate easily. Once they're gone, your pancreas produces less insulin, not because of diet, but because the infrastructure producing it has been quietly destroyed. Thymoquinone is one of the most potent natural antioxidants studied specifically in the context of pancreatic tissue. A 2015 study in the European Journal of Pharmacology examined thymoquinone's protective effect on beta cells under oxidative stress. The result: thymoquinone significantly reduced oxidative damage markers in pancreatic tissue and preserved beta cell function. Think about what this means practically. Every other remedy you're using manages glucose. Thymoquinone protects the cells that produce the hormone doing the managing. It's not just treatment, it's structural preservation. Mechanism 4, chronic inflammation reduction. This is the background mechanism that makes everything else work better. Chronic low-grade inflammation is one of the foundational drivers of insulin resistance. When inflammatory compounds called cytokines, particularly interleukin-6 and tumor necrosis factor alpha, stay chronically elevated, they directly interfere with insulin receptor signaling. Your cells stop responding to insulin, not because the insulin is wrong, but because the inflammatory environment is drowning out the signal entirely. Thymoquinone inhibits NF-kappa B, the master inflammatory transcription factor, and reduces circulating levels of IL-6 and TNF-alpha. A 2019 systematic review in Phytomedicine documented consistent anti-inflammatory effects across multiple Nigella sativa trials. As inflammation decreases, insulin receptor sensitivity improves, not through any direct receptor mechanism, but by quieting the biological noise that was blocking the signal from getting through. 4 mechanisms, all 4 operating simultaneously from one compound. Hepatic glucose suppression, peripheral insulin sensitivity, beta cell protection, chronic inflammation reduction. This is why the 23 trial meta-analysis found consistent, significant results across such different populations. The compound is working on the entire system at once, not just one piece of it. Let me give you the specific numbers. The 2017 meta-analysis, more than 1,500 participants, 23 randomized controlled trials, mean reduction in fasting blood glucose, 27 mg/dl, mean reduction in HbA1c, 1.08%. Insulin resistance, statistically significant improvement across trials. Let me put that HbA1c number in context. A 1% reduction in HbA1c is clinically significant. It corresponds to a meaningful reduction in diabetes complication risk. The American Diabetes Association's pharmacological intervention guidelines typically target HbA1c reductions in the range of 1 to 2%. Black seed, in the pooled results of 23 trials, achieved just over 1%. From a seed, there's one study I want to highlight specifically because it's directly relevant to the overnight mechanism. Bermosa and colleagues published in the Indian Journal of Physiology and Pharmacology in 2010, 94 patients with type 2 diabetes randomized to one of 3 doses of Nigella sativa, 1 gram, 2 grams, or 3 grams daily, or placebo. Duration 3 months. At the 3-month mark, the 1 gram group showed a 14% reduction in fasting glucose. The 2 gram group, what the researchers identified as the sweet spot, showed a 20% reduction. The 3 gram group was slightly less effective than the 2 gram group, suggesting a dose ceiling. But here is the detail that matters most. The researchers specifically noted that improvements in fasting glucose were more pronounced than improvements in postprandial glucose. Fasting numbers responded more than meal numbers. That is the overnight hepatic mechanism showing up directly in the data. This is the compound Beverly was missing and didn't know existed. Now, black seed is available in 3 forms. The form matters more than most people realize. Black seed oil, cold-pressed from Nigella sativa seeds, dark, pungent, with a sharp taste that catches at the back of the throat. The oil concentrates thymoquinone, which is fat-soluble, and delivers higher concentrations than ground seed. Multiple clinical trials used oil as the intervention, and the results are strong. Standard dose across trials, half a teaspoon to 1 teaspoon daily. Ground seed, whole seeds freshly ground in a small coffee grinder immediately before use. Ground seed delivers thymoquinone alongside the full fiber and nutrient matrix of the seed. The fiber has its own blood sugar benefits, slowing gastric emptying and feeding gut bacteria that improve insulin sensitivity. Slightly lower thymoquinone concentration than oil, but adds a fiber benefit that oil doesn't carry. Dose half a teaspoon of whole seeds, freshly ground. Whole seeds, traditional, valid, but significantly less bioavailable than either of the other 2 forms. The hard outer shell of an unprocessed black seed is difficult for your digestive system to break through. Studies suggest that grinding or pressing increases thymoquinone bioavailability by up to 300% compared to whole seeds. If you've been eating whole seeds and seeing nothing, this is almost certainly why. For the overnight hepatic mechanism specifically, cold-pressed black seed oil is the form to use. The rationale is straightforward. Thymoquinone is fat-soluble. Its absorption requires dietary fat. The oil delivers it already in its fat-soluble matrix. And because we need this compound active during the 2 to 4 a.m. window, we need a form that stays in the system long enough, oil taken with a small fat-containing food before sleep enters the bloodstream efficiently and maintains activity through more of the overnight window than ground seed taken alone. Where to find it? Walmart carries it in the supplement aisle or the international food section. Whole Foods, Middle Eastern grocery stores in most American cities, online. Look for cold-pressed and unrefined. The oil should be very dark, almost black-brown, with a strong, slightly medicinal smell. Light or golden oil has been processed and carries significantly lower thymoquinone content. Price range $12 to $25 for a 4-ounce bottle. That's a 2 to 4 month supply at therapeutic doses. One of the most affordable clinically validated compounds for blood sugar management available in any ordinary store. Here is the bedtime protocol, and I want to explain the timing before I give you the steps because the timing is the mechanism. The hepatic glucose production peak in people with insulin resistance typically occurs between 2 and 5 a.m. Thymoquinone's half-life in the bloodstream based on pharmacokinetic data, is approximately 4 to 6 hours after oral administration. To have thymoquinone active and working at 2 to 4 a.m., you need it in your bloodstream by 10 to 11 p.m. You are loading the compound before you sleep, so it peaks exactly when your liver's glucose production peaks. The protocol: 1 teaspoon of cold-pressed black seed oil, taken between 9:30 and 10:30 p.m., taken with a small fat-containing food. 1 teaspoon of natural peanut butter, a small handful of raw walnuts, a small piece of cheese, any fat source. The fat slows gastric emptying slightly and ensures thymoquinone is absorbed through the fat-soluble pathway rather than passing through largely unabsorbed. Many people mix the oil with half a teaspoon of raw honey. This is the traditional preparation used across Middle Eastern and South Asian cultures for centuries. Honey masks the intensity of the oil's taste, which is genuinely strong and not pleasant to everyone. The amount of honey is small enough that it creates no meaningful glucose event before bed. One bridge I want to build here, particularly for those of you taking metformin. Metformin's primary mechanism is hepatic glucose suppression through AMPK. Thymoquinone suppresses hepatic glucose production through direct enzyme inhibition. They work on the same problem from different angles. Some researchers have suggested this complementarity may be part of why some patients show better outcomes on lower metformin doses when combining with black seed, not because black seed replaces metformin, but because both are addressing the same overnight mechanism simultaneously through different pathways. If you take metformin, this is a conversation worth having with your prescribing physician, with this research in hand. Now, before you start, 3 interactions you need to understand. First, blood-thinning medications. Thymoquinone has antiplatelet properties. It reduces the tendency of blood cells to clump together. This is one of black seed's documented cardiovascular benefits. But if you take warfarin, Eliquis, Xarelto, Plavix, or even daily aspirin therapy, the combination amplifies the anticoagulant effect. Your INR may shift, bleeding risk may increase. Do not start black seed oil if you take blood-thinning medications without telling your doctor first and requesting appropriate monitoring. Second, sulfonylurea medications. Glipizide, glipamide, gliburide. These drugs force insulin secretion from your pancreas regardless of blood glucose level. Black seed's AMPK activation and hepatic suppression both lower blood glucose independently. Stacked on top of forced insulin secretion, blood sugar can drop lower and faster than expected. Hypoglycemia, blood sugar dropping below 70, is a real risk. Start at half a teaspoon for the first 2 weeks. Know what low blood sugar feels like: shaking, sweating, confusion, rapid heartbeat. Keep glucose tablets or juice accessible. Third, pregnancy and nursing. Animal studies have shown that thymoquinone at high doses has uterotonic effects. Therapeutic supplementation during pregnancy is not recommended based on current pharmacological review. Culinary amounts used as food seasoning are not in this category. Supplementation doses are. If you are pregnant, planning pregnancy, or nursing, speak with your OB before starting. For the majority of people watching this, those not on blood thinners, not on sulfonylureas, and not pregnant, the safety profile in the clinical trial literature is strong. GI discomfort is the most commonly reported side effect and typically resolves with gradual dose introduction. Here's what Beverly saw. Week 2 of adding cold-pressed black seed oil before bed. 1 teaspoon with a small amount of natural peanut butter. She kept everything she was already doing: the cinnamon, the Mediterranean diet, the afternoon walk, the metformin. She simply added 1 teaspoon of black seed oil before sleep. Week 1. No significant change in morning fasting numbers. She almost stopped. She told me she had been through enough disappointments with that morning reading that she was skeptical of everything by that point. She kept going. Week 2. Fasting glucose dropped from an average of 153 to 143. 10 points. She thought it was a fluctuation. Week 3, 138. Week 4, 131. At the 8-week mark, Beverly's average morning fasting glucose was 124, down from 153. A 29-point reduction, approaching the target she had been working toward for 11 months from a compound that costs less than $12 a month taken before sleep while she slept. At month 3, her endocrinologist ran an HbA1c 6.9, down from 7.8, a reduction of 0.9% in 3 months. The doctor asked what Beverly had changed. She described the bedtime oil protocol. He was quiet for a moment, then he said, and Beverly quoted this to me specifically, "I've never heard of that. Show me the study." That should have been the warning sign. Not about Beverly, about the gap between what the research supports and what gets communicated. Here is your realistic expected timeline. 1 to 2 weeks before the hepatic suppression effect appears in your morning readings. The enzyme inhibition is cumulative. Thymoquinone needs to build adequate tissue levels before the liver's production pathway is meaningfully suppressed. Weeks 2 through 4, visible movement in fasting numbers. Months 2 through 3, sustained reduction with HbA1c changes beginning to emerge. For those of you living with type 1 diabetes, the dawn phenomena affects type 1 patients as well, and the hepatic mechanism I've described is relevant regardless of type. Thymoquinone's beta cell protection mechanism is particularly meaningful given the autoimmune destruction of beta cells that drives type 1. However, the interaction with insulin therapy requires specific guidance from your endocrinologist. The hypoglycemia risk of combining a glucose-lowering compound with insulin is real and requires individualized monitoring. Bring the 2017 meta-analysis to that appointment. Here is where you start tonight. Tonight, purchase cold-pressed black seed oil. Walmart, Whole Foods, Middle Eastern grocery stores, online. Cold-pressed, dark-colored, unrefined. Budget $8 to $20. Nights 1 through 7. Half a teaspoon before bed with a small fat-containing food. 1 teaspoon of peanut butter, a few walnuts, a small piece of cheese. The traditional preparation, mix the oil with half a teaspoon of raw honey. If the taste is intense, take it quickly. It passes. From week 2 forward, increase to 1 teaspoon before bed. The dose that showed the strongest hepatic glucose results in the Mimosa trial. Every single morning, fasting glucose immediately upon waking. Before coffee, before water. Write it down, date and number, every morning for 30 days. You are building a log that will show you whether the hepatic mechanism is responding. 30 days in, bring that log to your doctor. Bring the 2017 meta-analysis. Have the conversation about what you're seeing. Do not stop your existing protocol. Keep the cinnamon. Keep the diet. Keep the walking. Keep the medication. Black seed oil addresses the mechanism your current protocol was never built to reach. It doesn't replace what's working. It fills the gap that was left open. There is more to the overnight window than hepatic glucose production alone. Cortisol timing, meal timing relative to sleep. The specific foods at dinner that amplify or quiet the 3 a.m. glucose release. These are elements addressed in the guide linked in the description below, built specifically for the morning number that refuses to move despite everything you're doing right. Black seed oil targets the hepatic mechanism. The guide addresses the full overnight system it operates within. The two work together in a way that neither does alone. Drop "I deserve answers" in the comments if this explained your morning number in a way nothing else has, and leave your fasting glucose reading, the morning number that has been frustrating you. I want to see it. I'm in the comments.